Hi, I'm Sabne Raznik, and usually this is the channel where I do mini readings of my own work. But I thought since Seamus Heaney recently died that I would read his long poem Station Island, which is a long poem, as I said, but I'm sure you know that Seamus Heaney is always worthy. He was a particularly important poet to me, so I wanted to do something to honor him at this time. And I'm not entirely sure that I will get all the pronunciations correct because there is a lot of Latin and colloquial speech, but I'll do my best. This is Seamus Heaney's Station Island. A hurry of bell notes flew over morning hush and water-blistered cornfields, and escaped ringing that stopped as quickly as it started. Sunday. The silence breathed and could not settle back, for a man had appeared at the side of the field, with a bow saw held stiffly up like a lyre. He moved and stopped to gaze up into hazel bushes, angled his saw in, pulled back to gaze again, and move on to the next. I know you, Simon Sweeney, for an old Sabbath breaker who has been dead for years. Damn all you know, he said, his eyes still on the hedge and not turning his head. I was your mystery man, and am again this morning. Through gaps in the bushes your first communion face would watch me cutting timber when cut or broken limbs of trees went yellow, when wood smoke sharpened air or ditches rustled. You sensed my trail there as if it had been sprayed. It left you half afraid. When they bade you listen in the bedroom dark to wind and rain in the trees and think of tinkers camped under a hilled-up cart, you shut your eyes and saw a wet axle and spokes in the moonlight and me streaming from the shower headed for your door. Sunlight broke in the hazels. The quick bell notes began a second time. I turned at another cell. A crowd of shawled women were waiting in the young corn, their skirts brushing softly. Their motion saddened one. It whispered to the silence, "Pray for us, pray for us." It conjured through the air until the field was full of half-remembered faces, a loose congregation that struggled past and on. As I drew behind them I was a fasted pilgrim, light-headed, leaving home to face into my station. "Stay clear of all processions," Sweeney shouted at me, but the murmur of the crowd and their feet slushing through the tender-bladed growth had opened a drugged path I was set upon. I trailed those early risers, falling into step before the smokes were up. The quick bell rang again. I was parked on a high road, listening to peewits and wind blowing around the car, when something came to life in the driving mirror. Someone walking fast in an overcoat and boots, bareheaded, big, determined in his sure haste along the crown of the road, so that I felt myself the challenged one. The car door slammed. I was suddenly out face to face with an aggravated man, raving on about nights spent listening for gun butts to come cracking on the door, yeomen on the rampage, and his neighbor among them, hammering home the shape of things. "Round about here you overtook the women," I said, as the thing came clear. "Your lock-dug pilgrim haunts me every time I cross this mountain, as if I am being followed, or following. I'm on my road there now to do the station. Oh, holy Jesus Christ, is nothing changed?" His head jerked sharply side to side and up like a diver's surfacing after a plunge. Then, with a look that said, "Who is this cub, anyhow?" he took cognizance again of where he was. The road, the mountain top, and the air, softened by a shower of rain, worked on his anger visibly until it is a road you travel on your own. I, who learned to read in the reek of flax and smelled hanged bodies rotting on their gibbets, and saw the looped slime gleaming from the sacks, hard-mouthed ribbon men and orange bigots, made me into the old fork-tongued turncoat who mucked the mire of their politics. If times were hard, I could be hard too. I made the traitor in me sink the knife, and maybe there's a lesson there for you. Whoever you are, wherever you come out of, for though there's something natural in your smile, there's something in it strikes me as defensive. The angry role was never my vocation, I said. I come from County Derry, where the last marching bands of ribbon men on Patrick's Day still played their hymn to Mary. Obedient strains like theirs turned me first, and not the harp of unforgiving men the Fenians strung. A lot of what you wrote I heard and did. This Lockburg station, flax pullings, dances, fair days, crossroads chat, and the shaky local voice of education. All that. And always, orange drums and neighbors on the roads at night with guns. I know, he said. But you have to try to make sense of what comes. Remember everything and keep your head. The alders in the hedge, I said. Mushrooms, dark clumped grass where cows or horses dung. The cluck when pith-lined chestnut shells split open in your hand. The melt of shells corrupting. Old jam pots in a drain clogged up with mud. And now Carlton was interrupting. All this is like a trout kept in a spring, or maggots sown in wounds for desperate ointment. Another life that cleans our element. We are earthworms of the earth, and all that has gone through us is what will be our trace. He turned on his heel when he was saying this and headed up the road at the same hard pace. I knelt. Hiatus. Habits afterlife. I was back among bead clicks and the murmurs, and from inside confessionals, side altars where candles died, insinuating slight, intimate smells of wax at body heat. There was an active, wind-stilled hush, as if in a shell that listened for ocean stopped, and a tide rested and sustained the roof. A seaside trinket floated then and idled in vision like phosphorescent weed, a toy grotto with seedling mussel shells and cockle glued in patterns over it. Pearls knit from a child invalid's breath with a shimmering mark, a house of gold that housed the snowdrop weather for death long ago. I would stow away in the hold of our big oak sideboard and forage for it, laid past in its tissue paper for good. It was like touching birds' eggs, robbing the nest of the word wreath, as kept and dry and secret as her name, which they hardly ever spoke, but was a white bird trapped inside me, beating scared wings when help of the sick fluttered its prey for us in the litany. A cold draught blew under the kneeling boards. I thought of walking round and round a space utterly empty, utterly a source, like the idea of sound, or like the absence sensed in smart-fed air above a ring of walked-down grass and rushes, where we once found the bad carcass and scrags of hair of our dog that had disappeared weeks before. Words swimming as I faced the sun, my back to the stone pillar and the iron cross, ready to say the dream words I renounce. Blurred oval prints of newly ordained faces, father pronounced with a fawning relish. The sunlit tears of parents being blessed. I saw a young priest, glossy as a blackbird, as if he had stepped from his anointing a moment ago, his purple stole in cord or censured loosely tied, his polished shoes unexpectedly secular beneath a pleated lace hem of linen cloth. His name had lain undisturbed for years like an old bicycle wheel in a ditch, ripped at last from under jungling briars, wet and perished. My arms were opened wide, but I could not say the words. The rainforest, he said, you've never seen the like of it. I lasted only a couple of years, bare-breasted women and rat-ribbed men, everything wasted. I rotted like a pear, I sweated masses. His breath came short and shorter. In long houses, I raised the chalice above headdresses. In Hogsigno, on that abandoned mission compound, my vocation is a stream off the drenched creepers. I had broken off from my renunciation while he was speaking, so as to clear the way for other pilgrims queuing to get started. I am older now than when you went away, I ventured, feeling a strange reversal. I never could see you on the foreign missions. I could only see you on a bicycle, a clerical student home for the summer, doomed to the decent thing, visiting neighbors, drinking tea, and praising homemade bread. Something in them would be ratified when they saw you at the door in your black suit, arriving like some sort of holy mascot. You gave too much relief. You raised a siege the world had laid against their kitchen grottos, hung with holy pictures and crucifixes. And you, he faltered, what are you doing here but the same thing? What possessed you? I at least was young and unaware that what I thought was chosen was convention. But all this you were clear of, you walked into over again, and the god has, as they say, withdrawn. What are you doing going through these motions? Unless. Again he was short of breath, and his whole fevered body yellowed and shook. Unless you are here taking the last look. Then where he stood was empty as the roads we both grew up beside, where the sick man had taken his last look one drizzly evening, when the tarmac steamed with the first breath of spring, and knee-deep mist awaited silently behind him on his servants visiting. An old man's hands, like soft paws, rowing forward, groped forward and warded off the air ahead. Barney Murphy shuffled on the concrete. Master Murphy. I heard the weakened voice bullying in sudden rage all over again, and fell in behind, my eyes fixed on his heels like a man lifting swaths at a mower's heels. His sockless feet were like the dried broad beam that split its stitches in the display jar, high on the window in the old classroom, white as shy faces in the classroom door. Master, those elders whispered. I wonder, Master. Rustling envelopes, proffering them, withdrawing, waiting for him to sign beside their marking. Master, I repeated to myself, so that he stopped and did not turn or move. Gone quiet in the shoulders, his small head vigilant in the cold gusts off the lock. I moved ahead and faced him, shook his hand. Above the winged collar, his mottled face went distant in a smile as the voice readied itself and husked and scraped. Good man yourself, then lapsed again into the limbo and dry urn of the larynx. The Adam's apple in its weathered sack worked like the plunger of a pump in drought, but yielded nothing to help the helpless smile. Morning field smells came past on the wind, the sex cut of sweet flower after rain, new meadow hay, birds' nests filled with leaves. You'd have thought the Anahorish school was purgatory enough for any man, I said. You have done your station. Then a little trembling happened, and his breath rushed the air softly as scythes in his lost meadows. Birch trees have overgrown winter moss. Dairy herds are grazing where the school was, and the school garden's loose black mold is grass. He was gone with that, and I was faced wrong way into more pilgrims absorbed in this exercise. As I stood among their whispers and bare feet, the mists of all the mornings I'd set out for Latin classes with them face-to-face refreshed me. Minza, Minsan sang in the air like a busy sharpened stone. We'll go some day to my uncle's farm at Toon, another master spoke, for what is the great moving power and spring of verse? Feeling, and in particular, love. When I went last year, I drank 3 cups of water from the well. It was very cold. It stung me in the ears. You should have met him, coming in as usual with a rubbed quotation and his cocked bird's eye dabbing for detail. When you're on the road, give lifts to people. You'll always learn something. There he went, in his belted gabardine, and after him another fosterer, slack-shouldered and clear-eyed. Sure, I might have known once I had made the pad, you'd be after me sooner or later. 42 years on and you've got no further? But after that again, where else would you go? Iceland, maybe? Maybe the Dordogne? And then the parting shot. In my own day, the odd one came here on the hunt for women. Freckle-face, fox-head, pot of the broom, catkin pixie, little fern swish. Where did she arrive from? Like a wish, wished and gone. Her I chose its secrets and whispered to. When we were playing houses, I was sunstruck at the basilica door, its stillness far away, a space, a dish, a blackened tin and knocked over stool, like a tramped Neolithic floor uncovered among dunes where the bent grass whispers on like reeds about Midas' secrets. I shut my ears to the bell, head hugged, eyes shut, leaf ears. Don't tell, don't tell. A stream of pilgrims answering the bell trailed up the steps as I went down them, towards the bottle green, still shade of an oak, shades of the Sabine farm on the stone beds of St. Patrick's Purgatory. Late summer, country distance, not an air. Loosen the toga for wine and poetry till Phoebus returning routs the morning star. As a somnolent hymn to Mary rose, I thought an old pain that packed bags of grain and the sloped shafts of forks and hoes once mocked me with, at my own long virgin fasts and thirsts, my nightly shadow feasts, haunting the granaries of words like breasts. As if I had knelt for years at a keyhole, mad for it, and all that ever opened was the breathed-on grill of a confessional, until that night I saw her honey-skimmed shoulder blades in the wetlands of her back, through the wide keyhole of her keyhole dress, and a window facing the deep south of luck opened, and I inhaled the land of kindness, as little flowers that were all bowed and shut by the night chill rise on their stems and open as soon as they have felt the touch of sunlight. So I revived in my wilting powers, and my heart flushed like somebody set free, translated, given, under the old tree. I had come to the edge of the water, soothed by just looking, idling over it as if it were a clear barometer or a mirror, when his reflection did not appear, but I had sensed a presence entering into my concentration, on not being concentrated as he spoke my name. And though I was reluctant, I turned to meet his face, and the shock was still with me at what I saw. His brow was blown open above the eye, and blood had dried on his neck and cheek. "Easy now," he said. "It's only me. You've seen men as raw after a football match. What time it was when I wakened up, I still don't know." Excuse me. But I heard his knocking, and it scared me, like the phone in the small hours, so I had the sense not to put on the light, but looked out from behind the curtain. I saw 2 customers on the doorstep, and an old Land Rover with the doors open. Excuse me, him. Okay. Parked on the street, so I let the curtain drop, and they must have been waiting for it to move, for they shouted to come down into the shop. She started to cry then, and roll round the bed, lamenting to herself, not even asking who it was. Excuse me. "Is your head astray, or what's come over you?" I roared, more to bring myself to my senses than out of any real anger at her, for the knocking shook me the way they kept it up, and her whinging and half screeching made it worse. All the time they were shouting, "Shop! Shop! Shop!" So I pulled on my shoes and a sports coat and went back to the window and called out, "What do you want? Could you quieten the racket, or I'll not come down at all? There's a child not well. Open up and see what you have got. Pills or a powder or something in a bottle." Excuse me. See if that helps. One of them said. He stepped back off the footpath so I could see his face in the street lamp, and when the other moved, I saw them both. But bad and all as the knocking was, the quiet hits me worse. She was quiet herself now, lying dead still, whispering to watch out. At the bedroom door, I switched on the light. It's odd they didn't look for a chemist. Who are they anyway at this hour of the night? She asked me, with her eyes standing in her head. "I know them to see," I said, but something made me reach and squeeze her hand across the bed before I went downstairs into the aisle of the shop. I stood there, going weak in the legs. I remember the stale smell of cooked meat, or something coming through as I went to open up. From then on, you know as much about it as I do. Did they say nothing? Nothing. What would they say? Were they in uniform, not masked in any way? They were barefaced as they would be in the day. Shites thinking they were the be-all and the end-all. Not that it it is any consolation. But they were caught, I told him, and got jail. Big-limbed, decent, open-faced. He stood forgetful of everything now except whatever was welling up in his spoiled head, beginning to smile. You've put on a bit of weight since you did your courting in that big Austin you got the loan of on a Sunday night. Through life and death he had hardly aged. There always was an athlete's cleanliness shining off him, and except for the ravished forehead and the blood, he was still that same rangy midfielder in a blue jersey and starched pants, the one stylist on the team. The perfect, clean, unthinkable Victor. Forgive the way I have lived indifferent. Forgive my timid, circumspect involvement, I surprised myself by saying. Forgive my eye, he said, all that's above my head. And then a stab of pain seemed to go through him, and he trembled like a heat wave and faded. Blackwater, white waves, furrows snow-capped. A magpie flew from the basilica and staggered in the granite airy space I was staring into, on my knees at the hard mouth of St. Bridget's bed. I came to, and there at the bed's stone hub was my archaeologist, very like himself, with his scribe's face smiling a straight-lipped smile, starting at the sight of me with the same old pretense of amazement, so that the wing of Woodkern's hair fanned down over his brow. And then, as if a shower were blackening already blackened stubble, the dark weather of his unspoken pain came over him. A pilgrim, bent and whispering on his rounds inside the bed, passed between us slowly. Those dreamy stars that pushed across the screen beside you in the ward, your heartbeats, Tom, I mean, scared me the way they stripped things naked. My banter failed too early in that visit. I could not take my eyes off the machine. I had to head back straight away to Dublin, guilty and empty, feeling I had said nothing, and that, as usual, I had somehow broken covenants and failed in obligation. I half knew we would never meet again. Did our long gaze and last handshake contain nothing to appease that recognition? Nothing at all. But familiar stone had me half numb to face the thing alone. I loved my still-faced archaeology, the small crab-apple physiognomies on high crosses, carved heads in abbeys. Why else dig in for years in that hard place, in a muck of bigotry under the walls, picking through shards and Williamite cannonballs? But all that we just turned to banter too. I feel that I should have seen far more of you, and maybe would have, but dead at 32? Ah, poet, lucky poet, tell me why what seemed deserved and promised passed me by. I could not speak. I saw a horde of black basalt axe heads, smooth as a beetle's back, a cairn of stone force that might detonate eggs of danger. And then I saw a face he had once given me, a plaster cast of an abbess, done by the Gowran master, mild-mouthed and cowled, a character of grace. Your gift will be a candle in our house. But he had gone when I looked to meet his eyes, and hunkering instead there in his place was a bleeding, pale-faced boy, plastered in mud. The red-hot pokers blazed a lovely red in Jerpoint that Sunday I was murdered. He said quietly, "Now do you remember? You were there with poets when you got the word, and stayed there with them, while your own flesh and blood was carted to Belgium from the fuse. They showed more agitation at the news than you did. But they were getting crisis first-hand column. They had happened in on live sectarian assassination. I was dumb, encountering what was destined, and so I pleaded with my second cousin. I kept seeing a grey stretch of Loch Beg, and the Strand empty at daybreak. I felt like the bottom of a dried-up lake. You saw that. And you wrote that, not the fact. You confused evasion and artistic tact. The Protestant who shot me through the head I accused directly, but indirectly you, who now atone perhaps upon this bed for the way you whitewashed ugliness and drew the lovely blinds of the Purgatorio and saccharined my death with morning dew. Then I seemed to waken out of sleep among more pilgrims whom I did not know, drifting to the hostel for the night. My brain dried like spread turf, my stomach shrank to a cinder and tightened and cracked. Often I was dogs on my own track, of blood on wet grass that I could have licked. Under the prison blanket and ambush stillness, I felt safe and settled around me. Street lights came on in small towns. The bomb flash came before the sound. I saw country I knew, from Glenshane down to Toon, and heard a car I could make out years away, with me in the back of it like a white-faced broom, a hitman on the brink, empty and deadly. When the police yielded my coffin, I was light as my head when I took aim. The voice from Blight and Hunger died through the black dorm. There he was, laid out with a drift of mass cards at his shrouded feet. Then the firing parties volley in the yard. I saw woodworm in gateposts and door jambs, smelt mildew from the bar loft, where he had watched and hid from fields that his draped coffin would raft through. Unquiet soul, they should have buried you in the buck where you threw your first grenade, where only helicopters and curlews make their maimed music, and sphagnum grass could teach you its medicinal repose, until, when the weasel whistles on its tail, no other weasel will obey its call. I dreamt and drifted. All seemed to run to waste, as down a swirl of murky glittering flood, strange polyp floated like a huge corrupt magnolia bloom, surreal as a shed breast, my softly awash and blanching self-disgust. And I cried among night waters, I repent my unweaned life that kept me competent to sleepwalk with connivance and mistrust. Then, like a pistol growing from the polyp, a lighted candle rose and steadied up until the whole bright, masted thing retrieved a course, and the currents it had gone with were what it rode and showed. No more adrift, my feet touched bottom, and my heart revived. Then something round and clear and mildly turbulent, like a bubble skin, or a moon in smoothly rippled blockwater, rose at a cobwebbed space. The molten inside sheen of an instrument revolved its polished convexes full upon me, so close and brilliant I seemed to pitch back in a headlong fall. And then it was the clarity of waking to sunlight and a bell and gushing taps in the next cubicle, still there for the taking. The old brass trumpet with its valves and stops I found once in loft thatch, a mystery I shied from then, for I thought such trove beyond me. I hate how quick I was to know my place. I hate where I was born. I hate everything that made me biddable and unforthcoming. I mouthed at my half-composed face in the shaving mirror, like somebody drunk in the bathroom during a party, lulled and repelled by his own reflection, as if the yarnstone would defy the kiln, as if the eddy would reform the pool, as if a stone swirled under a cascade, eroded and eroding on its bed, could grind itself down to a different pool. Then I thought of the tribe whose dances never fail, for they keep dancing till they sight the deer. Morning stir in the hostel. A pot, hooked on forged links. Soot flakes, pumping water. The open door brilliant with sunlight. Her smoke, rambling, and a thud of earthenware, drumming me back until I saw the mug beyond my reach on its high shelf, the one patterned with blue cornflowers, sprig after sprig repeating around it, as quiet as a milestone. When had it not been there? There was one night when fit-up actors used it for a prop, and I sat in the dark hall estranged from it as a couple vowed, and called it their loving cup, and held it in our gaze until the curtain jerked shut with an ordinary noise. Dipped and glamored then by this translation, it was restored to its old hair-cracked doze on the mantelpiece. Its parchment blazes fast as the otter surfaced once with Ronan Salter, miraculously unharmed, that had been lost day and night under the lock water. And so the saint praised God on the lock shore for that dazzle of impossibility. I credited again in the sun-filled door, so absolutely light it could put out fire. As if the prisms of the kaleidoscope, as if the prism, yeah, as if the prisms of the kaleidoscope, I plunged once in a butt of muddy water, surfaced like a marvelous lightship, and out of its silted crystals a monk's face that had spoken years ago from behind a grill spoke again about the need and chance to salvage everything, to re-envisage the zenith, and glimpsed jewels of any gift mistakenly abased. What came to nothing could always be replenished. Read poems as prayers, he said. And for your penance, translate me something by Juan de la Cruz. Returned from Spain to our chapped wilderness, his consonants aspirate, his forehead shining. He had made me feel there was nothing to confess. Now his sandaled passage stirred me on to this. How well I know that fountain, filling, running, although it is the night. That eternal fountain hidden away. I know its haven and its secrecy, although it is the night. But not its source, because it does not have one, which is all sources' source and origin, although it is the night. No other thing can be so beautiful. Here the earth and heaven drink their fill, although it is the night. So pellucid it never can be muddy, and I know that all light radiates from it, although it is the night. I saw no sounding line can find it. I know no sounding line can find its bottom, nobody ford or plumb its deepest fathom, although it is the night. It is current so in flood it overspills, to water hell and heaven and all peoples, although it is the night. And the current that is generated there, as far as it wills to, it can flow that far, although it is the night. And from these two a third current proceeds, which neither of these two, I know, precedes, although it is the night. This eternal fountain hides and splashes within this living bread that is life to us, although it is the night. Hear it calling out to every creature, and they drink these waters, although it is dark here, because it is the night. I am repining for this living fountain. Within this bread of life I see it plain, although it is the night. Like a convalescent, I took the hand stretched down from the jetty and sensed again an alien comfort as I stepped on ground, to find the helping hand still gripping mine, fish-cold and bony, but whether to guide or to be guided I could not be certain. For the tall man in step at my side seemed blind, though he walked straight as a rush upon his ash-plant, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Then I knew him in the flesh, out there on the tarmac among the cars, wintered hard and sharp as a blackthorn bush. His voice, eddying with the vowels of all rivers, came back to me, though he did not speak yet, a voice like a prosecutor's or a singer's, cunning, narcotic, mimic, definite as a steel nib's downstroke, quick and clean, and suddenly he hit a litter basket with his stick, saying, "Your obligation is not discharged by any common right. What you do, you must do on your own. The main thing is to write for the joy of it. Cultivate a work-less that imagines its haven like your hands at night, dreaming the sun in the sunspot of a breast. You are fasted now, light-headed, dangerous. Take off from here, and don't be so earnest, so ready for the sackcloth and the ashes. Let go, let fly, forget. You've listened long enough. Now strike your note." It was as if I had stepped free into space alone with nothing that I had not known already. Raindrops blew in my face as I came to, and heard the harangue and jeers going on and on, The English language belongs to us. You are raking at dead fires, rehearsing the old whinges of your age. That subject people's stuff is a cod's game, infantile, like this peasant pilgrimage. You lose more of yourself than you redeem, doing the decent thing. Keep at a tangent. When they make the circle wide, it's time to swim out on your own and fill the element with signatures on your own frequency, echo soundings, searches, probes, allurements. Elver gleams in the dark of the whole sea. The shower broke in a cloudburst. The tarmac fumed and sizzled as he moved off quickly. The downpour loosed its screens round his straight walk. So I apologize for all my mistakes and the coffin fit in the middle. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you.